It's been a sleepless night for many of the crew members involved with the mining camp outside Nome, Alaska. The moment they've spent weeks preparing for has finally arrived as they set their sights skyward in anticipation for the first wave of eager miners en route to the Arctic. Nome, Alaska, one of the few towns in the world synonymous with gold. Covered in snow and ice only a few short weeks prior, Nome has once again transformed itself to resemble the gold rush town it's famous for. It is now ready to accommodate the hundreds of miners traveling north for their chance at discovery. As the participants of the Alaska Gold Expedition step off the airplane, they quickly realize their longing-for adventure has finally arrived.
Big Bob. Hey.
You're here.
Doing fine, Robert. How you doing, buddy?
Good, good.
Yeah, made it.
And that'll tell us where we're going to deliver the baggage for you.
A fleet of trucks are parked outside the airport, ready to transport the participants to a life they've dreamed about for months. Enthusiasm is written all over their faces, as they couldn't be more ready to begin hunting for the elusive metal they've traveled so far to find. Big Bob, Little Bob, and Little John pack the participants and their luggage into the trucks and prepare to embark down the golden beach of Nome. For some, this will be the first time ever making this journey, and the experience is like no other.
Okay, seatbelts on.
Next stop, the Gold Prospectors Association of America's Cripple River Mining Camp. After the distressing surprise of the White Horse Rapids, the men and women on the trail to the Klondike were no longer going to assume the worst was behind them. A wise decision as they approached the final obstacle only 200 miles outside of Dawson.
The Five Finger Rapids are further up the Yukon River, and it was the last piece of really treacherous water between here and Dawson.
Much like the rapids near Whitehorse, the Five Finger Rapids greeted the stampeders with a vengeance.
It's four big rocks right in the middle of the river, and the channels are quite narrow. And of course, more rivers join in with the Yukon and make the current run harder and harder. So by the time they get there, it's really moving quite along.
There were 5 different ways to pass through the jagged rocks, only one of which was even remotely safe.
Apparently the right side is the good one. I'll bet they didn't know on the first try, though.
The entire quest from Seattle to this point on the Yukon River separated the men from the boys. Only the valiant remained, and while still on high alert, it was smooth sailing from this point on.
But after that, it's actually not so bad. They say that was the most pleasant part of the trip.
Every man, woman, and child sailing to the Klondike had different expectations for when they arrived.
They had been through a real arduous trip. And, you know, it wasn't just the Chilkoot Trail. They were going through Whitehorse Rapids, Five Finger Rapids, again, contending with the river conditions and whatnot and the cold.
Many were probably expecting to see a glow from the abundance of gold as the confluence of the Klondike River to the Yukon River began to creep over the horizon.
There were rumors at the very beginning that the creek beds were basically just lined with gold, and it was just like a carpet of gold in the creek beds.
Many of them thought that they could just scoop the gold nuggets directly off the ground. And there were even some things written up about, you could pick them off of bushes. Silly, of course.
What they did in fact see was an emerging town.
Well, when people arrived in Dawson, certainly reality hit them in the face.
As they pulled their boats to shore, they were greeted by hundreds of people who had already staked claim in their promised land.
Arriving here, if there was one thing they were going to find out that first day was, hey, all of those best claims, they were staked a long time ago.
If they weren't early, a lot of the good claims were taken.
How could this be? How, after shedding blood, sweat, and tears, could the leading stampeders be too late?
The reality is that the vast majority of these stampeders, when they got to the Klondike gold fields and to Dawson City, they discovered that the majority of the good claims had already been staked by those prospectors who are already in Alaska and the Yukon.
Remember, their journey didn't begin until July 1897, which was 11 months after the discovery of gold in the Klondike. On August 16, 1896, an American prospector by the name of George Carmack, his wife Kate Carmack, her brother Skookum Jim, and their nephew Dawson Charlie discovered huge quantities of gold on one of the Klondike's tributaries.
This discovery of gold took place along a little tiny creek, which was called Rabbit Creek, which isn't a very glorious name. So they very quickly decided to change the name to Bonanza Creek, which seemed to be more fitting.
And the story goes that after dinner one day, Skookum Jim was down at the creek's edge, and he saw what appeared to be pieces of cheese in the creek. Well, it wasn't cheese, it was gold.
The claims were registered the very next day, and the news of this discovery spread like wildfire to the mining camps in the Yukon River Valley.
They went to the tavern and said, well, guess what we found? And they say the next day in the town of 40 Mile, you couldn't find a boat because everyone who had been in the bar that night, including some of the Mounties, had headed upstream to the Klondike to stake their claims.
All of the claims around them were picked up very quickly.
And it was pretty much the prospectors of the town of 40 Mile who got the good claims in the Klondike region.
By the end of August, all of Bonanza Creek had been claimed by miners.
And nearby was an even richer creek, which they would call El Dorado. And these were two of the richest creeks in the world.
By mid-December 1896, word of the riches in Dawson had reached the nearest large settlement in Alaska, Circle City. The Yukon River was frozen at the time, but the prospectors in Circle City were able to reach the gold fields in Dawson by dog sled before all the best claims were taken. It wouldn't be for another 7 months that the story of the discovery reached the outside world with the arrivals of the steamships Excelsior and Portland to the docks of the western continental United States. By the time the first wave of stampeders arrived in Dawson, nearly 2 years had passed since the Klondike gold discovery. Disappointment couldn't even begin to describe the undying sadness felt in their hearts and minds as they saw their golden rug pulled from under them. By the spring of 1898, the town of Dawson grew from 500 to more than 30,000.
There is a saying that 1 million people dreamt of coming up here. 100,000 actually laid plans. 30 to 40,000 would actually arrive here, but only a few hundred would strike it rich.
Hundreds were filled with such bitterness and resentment toward their shattered dreams that they immediately began their journey home.
And many of them would actually set up along the riverbank here, above their rafts or boats or scows, a for sale sign.
They sold what was left of their equipment, their pickaxes and so on, just enough to get out of the Yukon go down the river, get to St. Michael at the mouth, grab a steamer back to Seattle or wherever they came from.
But there were others that were more entrepreneurial, and they realized that, you know, these miners, they might need entertainment, they might need baked goods, they might need their laundry or sewing done. Why not stay here and mine the miners?
For tens of thousands, Dawson City was their new home.
They were pretty disappointed, but there were definitely a lot of other ways to make money during the gold rush.
Those that got there and couldn't get a claim worked on other people's claims.
Some of these people, by doing that, would be able to kind of keep their ear to the possible sale of a mine if it came available, and they were able to buy that claim and do fairly well.
Make no mistake, despite the stampeders being too late to stake their own claims, gold was still very prevalent throughout the city. It was now time to get creative for a big piece of the pie. It wasn't long before the feeling of disappointment turned into a feeling of determination. The booming Dawson City was nothing these brave men and women haven't seen before. They've defeated Seattle, Skagway, Bennett, Canyon City, and although the game has changed, they were now ready to take on the final chapter, the Klondike. Back in Nome, Alaska, the participants have nearly completed their maiden journey down the beach, and it is a moment in time that will never be forgotten.
As far as participants go this year, it's pretty exciting. We've made some changes over the last couple of years, and it seems to have gotten a pretty positive response from people. And this year we have almost 70% more people coming up to camp than we did last year. People are enjoying themselves up here, and we're really excited to have a good season with probably one of the largest crowds we've had in a decade. It should be a really good year.
You know, it's always a great time when they show up. You know, it's kind of like the end of the beginning. We're ending all the work, the preparation, and now we're getting ready for the people to come up here, and we just love having them up here. And the more we can do to help them and instill the beauty and love of this place on them is great.
Marcy Hennard is the head of the transportation crew, and she is given the pleasure of being the first to greet the participants as they arrive at the camp.
It's fun because I get to meet all the people and visit with them and find out where they're from and just kind of get to know them a little bit more that I wouldn't in another department. John, Martha, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
You've been here before?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought you looked familiar. Come in here and there's coffee, snacks.
Exactly.
We'll give you a short version of the do's and don'ts. And
We are home, baby.
That's right.
Let's go do it. It's been a long
Home for
time.
the summer. That's right.
The participants are now settled in, and before they are unleashed on the property, they must sit through a quick orientation where they are introduced to the crew.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to start right out. I'm going to start with our camp medic, Ron McKee.
Dr. Ron McKee and his wife Carol are the camp medics. Their facility is fully stocked with all the amenities one would expect from their local physician. The camp also has an ATV doctor, Harvey Comer.
We're down there to fix your sick donkey. We don't like to see you come down there, but if you do, we'll try to take care of it for you. Remember, they're donkeys, not racehorses.
Kevin Hoagland is a metal detecting professional.
A lot of the stuff that you've learned in the lower 48 you can kind of throw out the window because it really doesn't matter up here. It's a completely different world.
He has made himself available to conduct nugget hunting outings and answer any questions the participants have regarding their detectors.
Nobody really has any idea what to expect when they come to Alaska. My very first trip to Alaska, I had no idea what to expect.
Hope you guys have a great time this week, and if you need anything, I'm here for you, Al's here for you, and anybody with a white name badge is here for you, so have a great week.
Seconds after the meeting concludes, the camp is empty and the rush is on. While participants scatter every which way, the most popular destination is the Golden Beach.
First time I got here, I got out of the truck, I took a shovel and a pan, scooped up a little bit of the sand, went down to the ocean and panned it, and there was gold in a pan. I said, I'm coming back.
Jackson called River Bottom Boys. There's 2 boys over there, Richard and I.
I'd rather spend time anywhere here than 29 Palms, California, because it was 112 degrees when I left. We got a mountain of gravel we got to move, because this is a layer that we're in right now. It's pretty good.
There's a little bit of color in there, just by looking, so that's good.
My responsibility is to make sure that there's gold on all the claims for the participants when they come in. We need to make sure that all the equipment is on the beach, so when they come, they don't have to set it up. We got it pretty well set up for them. When they're finding gold, they're happy. When they're happy, I'm happy.
I'm loving every minute of it.
Oh man, isn't it great? It's amazing. I watch people jump out of the trucks, go through quick orientation, and they're out on the beach with their gold pans. It's 1901 all over again.
Still to come on Alaskan. The participants begin staking claim on the beach, but soon realize this material is like nothing they've worked with before. For those who persevere, there is still an abundance of gold for the taking. The miners in the Klondike are running into a similar learning curve as they reach permafrost. Visit AlaskanTheSeries.com for additional content from this and future episodes of Alaskan. And join the Alaskan the Series fan community on Facebook for all the latest news and updates.